Some stories aren't meant to be shared, not because they're false, but because remembering them means something remembers you back. Breathe in. The air feels impossibly clean pure, like your very first breath. Your lungs expand, consciousness slowly stitching itself together. You open your eyes, but there is nothing to see, only darkness. Aside from your own ragged breathing, the only sound is the faint, rhythmic tapping of rain striking metal somewhere above you. You try to stand, but something locks you in place, clamping you to a seat. Your arms and legs move freely, but your torso is trapped. Your past is gone, a hollow void. You don't remember how you got here. You don't remember who you are. You are alone, nameless, buried in the dark. Something presses against your face. When you reach up, your fingers collide with hard metal near your mouth. A mask. It's sealed tightly, painfully so. You try to pull it off, but sharp pain flares instantly enough to make you recoil. Breathing becomes harder, faster. Panic claws up your spine as you draw deeper breaths through the mask. You thrash against the restraints, frustrated sounds rising into desperate cries. You kick, you twist. Then, a cold sensation grazes the side of your neck, like frost brushing bare skin. The panic fades, your body relaxes as a chemical warmth spreads through you, heavy and soothing. It feels like comfort, like safety, like something familiar, something maternal. You try to picture your mother. Nothing comes, just a blank, faceless silhouette. You want the feeling to last. It doesn't. The gentle rain is swallowed by the violent roar of machinery. Your seat begins to move. You wonder if the darkness is real or if the mask itself blinds you. A deep red glow suddenly ignites, cutting through the void. You are not alone. Two others sit beside you, arranged in a triangular structure. Both wear masks identical to yours, black, skull-like, with opaque visors and thick rubber seals. One sits calmly, motionless. The other is shaking violently, gripping his restraints, breathing in frantic bursts. Before you can react, a cold mechanical voice echoes around you. Stability optimal. Prepare for descent. A countdown begins. 5. You glance at the others. The calm one doesn't move. The panicked one begins begging, pleading for mercy through sobs and broken words. 4. 3. Your heart pounds. 2. You brace yourself. 1. Release. Your stomach lurches as the capsule drops. Air screams past you. Pressure builds violently in your ears. The structure shudders as you plunge downward at impossible speed. You are certain you are about to die. The memory of that faceless woman returns, fear frozen in her expression. Then metal screams. Brakes engage. The capsule slows, grinding violently until it stops. Silence. The calm man remains still. The terrified one slumps forward unconscious. The capsule shifts again, then splits apart. Your restraints unlock. A bright white light flickers on, emanating from your mask itself, illuminating a sterile underground facility. You climb out. Scientific equipment. Workstations. Rails descending into an abyss so deep light cannot reach the bottom. Voices crackle through your mask. The terrified man demands answers, clawing at his face, covering until his movements slow. Chemicals silence him again. The calm man shakes his head. He knows nothing. The mechanical voice returns. Access equipment compartment. Inside, you find tools, a compact industrial laser, a heavy firearm, a handheld device, a digital master key. None of you remember your pasts. Yet each of you instinctively knows how to use what you've been given. Power must be restored. You descend deeper into the facility, past signs marked research, reactor, containment. The reactor roars back to life. Then alarms. Red lights pulse. A woman's voice replaces the machine's monotone. Warning. Temperature instability detected. Panic, sweat, desperation. The engineer stabilizes it barely. You only have power for one area. The system chooses for you, Area 74B. The facility is massive, endless corridors, stairs that seem to descend forever. The doors to 74B have already been breached. Inside, you find bodies. 3 of them. They wore the same suits, the same masks. Torn apart, Whatever killed them didn't need weapons. The system demands a sample. Specimen 21. It looks like stone, but it isn't. Audio logs reveal the truth. It was never geological. It was alive, dormant, waiting. Power reactivated it. You are ordered to contain it. The machinery screams as the process begins, loud enough to draw anything nearby. You wait, breathing shallow, muscles tense. Nothing comes. Hope flickers. You are told to return to the capsule. You retrace your path through the darkness. Then, a voice. Help me. It comes from the dark. The engineer moves toward it. You follow. A body slumps in the corner, mask shattered, skull visible beneath. Dead. The voice speaks again. From the ceiling. It mimics humanity, but it is not human. Tendrils writhe from a once human form fused to metal, dripping, pulsing, alive. It strikes. The engineer is taken. You scream. The gunner fires. Too late. The creature learns as it feeds. The engineer dies screaming. You run. The capsule waits. The voice follows. Tendrils force their way inside. The gunner is taken. You are next. Until something slams into the creature. It is torn away. The capsule ascends. You survive. Rain greets you again. Comforting. You remove the gunner's mask. His face is familiar. Too familiar. All of them had the same face. Command control is full of corpses. Every one of them identical. Outside, the world is dead. Ash, dust, gray skies. A message carved into metal. It won't stop. Footprints lead into the wasteland. You can follow them. You will die. But at least, you will die in the light. My name is Joseph Sutri. I'm 29 years old, and I'm currently pursuing a PhD in psychology at the University of Manchester. Psychology has dominated my life for nearly 13 years. I didn't choose it with any grand plan. I picked it almost randomly as an A-level subject, knowing very little about it beyond the assumption that it might be interesting. By the time Christmas arrived that year, I was completely consumed by it. During that winter break, I devoured everything I could find. Freud, Skinner, and then later Jung. By the time summer rolled around, I'd pushed through Pavlov, Festinger, and countless others. Over that year, I came to believe psychology wasn't just fascinating, it was essential. We've learned how to repair and preserve our bodies with incredible precision, yet we barely understand the machinery that drives our minds. I often thought that timely psychological intervention could have prevented untold suffering throughout history. It might sound naive, but I genuinely believed psychology was the only science capable of addressing humanity's deepest flaws. My obsession showed in my grades. At first, my parents were unsure about my sudden devotion, but once they saw my results, they encouraged it wholeheartedly. Boxes of secondhand psychology books began arriving at home. On results day, the H I earned secured me a place on a BPS-accredited psychology course at Manchester, my first choice in every respect. Those undergraduate years were some of the happiest of my life. Staying on for a master's degree felt inevitable, even if it meant mounting debt. The only thing holding me back from committing to a PhD was the absence of a topic I felt worthy of years of research. That changed near the end of my master's degree. I was reading a music magazine when I came across a brief article discussing the medicinal effects of music. It mentioned studies suggesting that certain types of music could reduce epileptic seizures or lessen physical pain. The article didn't explain how this worked. It barely scratched the surface. When I looked deeper, I found nothing but vague theories, mystical speculation, and scientific indecision. I realized something important then. No one had properly explored why music influences us so profoundly. If no comprehensive work existed, then I would write it. My research became obsessive. I tore through academic papers, historical texts, and personal accounts. Most were unreliable, but eventually I stumbled upon the writings of Robert Hooke, a 17th century English philosopher and experimentalist. Hooke expanded on ancient ideas like musica mundana and musica humana, proposing that all matter, including human beings, exists in constant vibration. The universe, he argued, is a symphony. Humans are instruments. According to Hooke, music doesn't simply evoke emotions metaphorically, it physically alters us. Our molecules respond to frequencies aligned with grief, joy, rage, or love. Two lovers resonate together. A mob vibrates with shared fury. Musical instruments, in this framework, become tools of immense power. That idea changed everything for me. While Hooke himself is well documented, I found almost nothing about composers who attempted to apply his theories scientifically. There were countless works inspired by the aesthetic of cosmic harmony, but few that attempted to manipulate specific frequencies to affect human consciousness. After weeks of searching, I discovered a little-known Polish composer named Władysław Bieski. Born in 1810 to a French father and Polish mother, Bieski was a prodigy. He performed publicly as a child and composed by the age of 11. He studied in Warsaw and trained under the finest musicians available. But at 19, he vanished from the public eye, traveling across Europe under the sponsorship of wealthy patrons. When he returned, his music had changed completely. His compositions grew slower, darker, more deliberate. Months were spent on single works. When his latest concerto debuted, audiences were horrified. Critics condemned it. Riots erupted. Church authorities intervened. Performances were canceled, and Bieski sank into obscurity. Eventually, he disappeared again, this time for 11 years. When he resurfaced, he had completed what he called his masterpiece, String Quintet No. 13 in E minor. It was never publicly performed. One French historian claimed rehearsals ended in disaster. Musicians allegedly refused to continue after only a few bars. Several later took their own lives. Bieski himself reportedly died by suicide shortly afterward. I was skeptical, but fascinated. Finding the music proved nearly impossible. No recordings existed. Dealers dismissed it as myth. But eventually, in an antique shop in Warsaw, I discovered a fragment of the sheet music printed in an old orchestral journal. I scanned it into a music program and prepared to listen. The first notes were discordant and strange, but not frightening. Then came a subtle, rising tone, barely audible. That's when my body reacted. I vomited violently. My skin crawled. I felt pressure behind my eyes. Afterward, exhaustion consumed me. I dismissed it as illness. The second listen was easier. The third was comforting. That night, I dreamed of a vast black expanse. A colossal, shapeless presence loomed before me, ancient, indifferent, unknowable. It showed me creation itself, woven from pale threads pulled from the fabric of reality and shaped into living flesh. When I woke, 13 hours had passed. From then on, everything changed. I stopped feeling hunger. I stopped needing sleep. I could hold my breath indefinitely. Pain ceased to exist. One of my eyes darkened completely, yet caused no discomfort. I realized the music hadn't cursed me, it had unlocked me. Music, I believe now, is a language encoded into reality itself. Bieski found the key. Not a key to a place, but a key to us. Those who couldn't accept the transformation destroyed themselves. I embraced it. I don't know if it's enough to change you, but I know this: I've seen God, and God is vibration. My name is Jonah Sutter, and I am 29 years old. Until recently, I was a doctoral candidate in cognitive psychology at a Northern English research university whose red brick buildings are older than most of the theories taught inside them. Psychology has defined my life for almost 14 years, not as a career choice, but as a gravitational force. Something that pulled me inward long before I understood what it was I was orbiting. I did not choose psychology because I wanted to help people. That answer is expected, rehearsed, and mostly dishonest. I chose it because it unsettled me, because it hinted, quietly, persistently, that the thing we call the self was neither stable nor sacred. At 16, I selected psychology as an advanced subject almost at random. I remember filling out the form in a fluorescent-lit classroom, bored, half asleep, my pen hovering between options. Biology felt mechanical. Literature felt exhausted. Psychology seemed undefined. That ambiguity hooked me. By winter of that year, something had gone wrong in the best possible way. While my friends spent the holiday drinking and sleeping through afternoons, I barricaded myself in my room with secondhand paperbacks and academic PDFs scavenged from obscure forums. Freud first, because he was unavoidable. Then behaviorism. Skinner, Watson, cold, sterile, reassuring in their cruelty. After that came Jung, and with him, the rot. Symbols, archetypes, collective structures that existed independent of any one mind. By spring, I had devoured Pavlov, Festinger, Milgram, James, and dozens of lesser names whose theories contradicted one another but agreed on one thing: human consciousness was not what it pretended to be. Something inside me clicked during those months. Not excitement. Certainty. We had mapped the genome. We could replace organs, reroute nerves, extend life beyond what previous centuries would have called obscene. And yet, the mind, the engine behind every atrocity, every miracle, remained barely understood. We medicated symptoms, categorized behaviors, and argued endlessly about definitions. But we had no unifying model, no mechanical truth. I became convinced, dangerously convinced, that psychology was not merely another science. It was the science, the missing discipline. The one that could have prevented wars, genocides, mass delusions, religious hysterias. If only we had intervened earlier. If only we had known what levers to pull. It was a naive belief. I know that now. At the time, it fueled me. My grades reflected it. Teachers stopped questioning my fixation when results arrived. My parents, initially wary of what they assumed was a phase, began feeding it instead. Boxes of books arrived weekly. Yellowed journals, dissertations printed in fonts no longer used. I consumed them all. When results day came, my placement into a prestigious, accredited undergraduate program felt less like an achievement and more like inevitability. Those years were, in retrospect, the calm before infection. University suited my obsession. I thrived in lectures, relished debates, volunteered for studies no one else wanted to run. Sleep became optional. Food forgettable. The mind was everything. When graduation approached, the idea of stopping felt unthinkable. A master's degree followed, then discussions of doctoral funding. The only thing missing was a subject worthy of annihilating the rest of my 20s. It arrived by accident. I was reading a cultural magazine, one of those publications that pretends to straddle art and science while understanding neither particularly well. A small column, barely half a page, discussed emerging research into the therapeutic applications of music. Epileptic patients experiencing reduced seizure frequency. Burn victims reporting lower pain perception. Dementia patients responding to melodies they could no longer name. The article was shallow, the language speculative, but something in it lodged under my skin. Music was everywhere, every culture, every era. Before writing, before agriculture, and yet, psychologically speaking, it remained an anomaly. Evolutionary theories contradicted one another. Emotional explanations felt circular. Neuroscience mapped activation, but not causation. No one could explain why sound organized in time could reach places language could not. I began digging. At first, the literature disappointed me. Romantic mysticism disguised as research. Half-formed hypotheses. 1,000 metaphors standing in for evidence. When empirical rigor appeared, it stopped short, afraid, it seemed, of its own implications. Weeks passed, then months. Eventually, buried in a digitized archive of 17th century experimental philosophy, I encountered a name I had known only peripherally: Robert Hooke. Hooke is remembered for microscopes, elasticity, optics. What is less discussed, deliberately so, I would later learn, are his speculations on vibration, his belief that all matter existed in oscillation. That sound was not a phenomenon layered atop reality, but a fundamental expression of it. He drew from ancient sources, musica mundana, musica humana ideas dismissed as poetic relics. Hooke treated them as physics. The universe, he suggested, was not constructed of static objects, but of rhythms, frequencies interacting. Human beings were not observers of this symphony. They were instruments embedded within it. Emotion in this framework was not metaphorical resonance. It was literal. Grief, rage, ecstasy, each corresponded to specific vibratory states. Two people in love did not merely feel aligned. Their matter synchronized. Crowds became dangerous not because of ideas, but because of harmonic amplification. Music, then, was not art, it was technology. The implications terrified me and thrilled me. If Hooke was correct, then certain sound structures could induce specific physiological and psychological states, not through suggestion, but through direct interaction with the body's fundamental oscillations. Therapy was the least interesting application. Control was the obvious one. I searched desperately for anyone who had taken these ideas seriously. Most had not. But after weeks of chasing footnotes and untranslated references, I found him, Witold Bienek, a 19th century composer of mixed heritage. Child prodigy, conservatory darling. His early works were unremarkable. Technically proficient, emotionally conventional. At 19, he vanished from public life, traveling across Europe under the patronage of aristocrats whose names appeared nowhere else in the historical record. When Bienek returned, his music had changed. Tempos slowed to glacial pace, harmonies darkened, structures elongated beyond accepted form. He became obsessive, spending months refining single passages. His comeback performance ended in chaos. Audience members reportedly fled. Fights broke out. Clergy intervened. The piece was condemned as corruptive. Bienek retreated again, this time for over a decade. When he emerged, he claimed to have completed his life's work, a string quintet in E minor. It was never performed publicly. Accounts vary. Some say the musicians refused to continue rehearsal. Others claim illness. One obscure pamphlet alleged multiple suicides among those exposed to it. Bienek himself died shortly thereafter under circumstances politely labeled melancholic. I assumed myth. But myth leaves paper trails. In a neglected archive during a research trip to Eastern Europe, I found a partial score, never reprinted, never recorded. Just enough. I digitized it. I listened. The opening was unsettling but manageable. Atonal, asymmetrical, heavy with tension. Then came a rising frequency, barely audible, more felt than heard. My body rejected it. I vomited. My vision blurred. A pressure built behind my eyes like hands pushing outward. I collapsed, shaking, convinced I was experiencing a neurological event. Medical tests found nothing. The second listen was less violent. The third was soothing. That night I dreamed. I stood in a void without dimension. Before me loomed something vast, not a being, not a shape, but a presence. It did not acknowledge me. It did not need to. I was shown, not told, how existence assembled itself. Threads drawn from nothing, vibrating into matter. Consciousness woven as an afterthought. When I woke, nearly 14 hours had passed. From that day on, the rules stopped applying. Hunger faded. Sleep became unnecessary. Breath optional. Pain irrelevant. My body adapted, retuned. One eye darkened entirely, pupil swallowing sclera, yet my vision sharpened. I understood then. The music had not harmed me. It had completed me. Music is not human invention. It is the interface language of reality. Bienek did not compose beauty. He composed instructions. Those who broke could not accept the rewrite. I did. You may hear unusual sounds in this recording. They are intentional. I do not know if they will change you, but I know this. I have perceived the architecture behind existence, and what we call God is not a mind, it is a frequency. My name is Elias Kroner. I am 83 years old, and I have carried this account with me for most of my life. I write it now not because I expect belief, forgiveness, or understanding, but because silence has done nothing to weaken the memories. If anything, it has sharpened them. I was born in the winter of 1942 in a city that no longer feels like home. My father disappeared before I was old enough to know his face. My mother told me he had been sent east during the final years of the war and never returned. Like so many others, he simply became another absence, spoken of carefully, as if too much detail might summon grief back into the room. After the war, we drifted, first to one city, then another. Eventually, when political tensions and food shortages made life unbearable, my mother made the decision to leave Germany altogether. I was 11 years old when we boarded a crowded bus heading south into the mountains, carrying everything we owned in 2 battered suitcases. Our destination was a small alpine village called Rosenwald, tucked deep into a valley where snow lingered well into spring. The war had passed over it like a distant storm. Buildings stood intact. Forests remained thick and ancient. Life there moved slowly, measured not by clocks but by seasons. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. The villagers were reserved but kind. They believed in order, tradition, and keeping one's business private. I attended the local school, served as an altar assistant at the church, and spent my afternoons wandering the forest edge with friends. Among them was Matthias, a boy 2 years older than me, braver than he had any right to be, and loyal to a fault. Those years were peaceful, happy even. Then, during the winter of 1956, a child vanished. At first, it was dismissed as an accident. Mountain terrain is unforgiving, especially for the young. But the following winter, another child disappeared, then another. Always during the cold months, always near the forest. By the time the third winter arrived, fear had settled into Rosenwald like frost. Curfews were imposed. Children were kept indoors after dusk. Parents spoke in hushed tones, and search parties combed the woods whenever fresh snow revealed unfamiliar tracks. Authorities from nearby towns investigated, but nothing ever came of it. No bodies were found. In December of 1957, 2 brothers went missing while sledding on a hillside not far from the village. One of them, the younger, was found alive hours later, hiding inside the hollow of a fallen tree. He was frostbitten, incoherent, and terrified beyond words. When asked what had happened, he said only one thing: "It followed us." He refused to say more. That should have been enough to stop us from ever testing the curfew. But fear does strange things to young minds. For Matthias and me, it became a challenge rather than a warning. We were 13 and 15, old enough to believe we understood the world, young enough to believe we were untouchable. On the last Friday before Christmas break, we decided to sneak out. It was foolish, reckless, unforgivable in hindsight. We waited until our parents were asleep, then slipped into the frozen night, meeting at the edge of town near an abandoned storage shed. Matthias had stolen a flask of homemade liquor from his father's cellar. I had taken cigarettes from a neighbor's coat pocket. The air was sharp, clean, and painfully cold. Snow crunched beneath our boots as we laughed quietly, exhilarated by our defiance. The village lights glowed warmly behind us as we moved toward the forest, telling ourselves we would only stay out a little while. We never intended to go far. But after spotting a patrol lantern in the distance, we panicked and fled deeper into the trees, away from safety, away from the familiar paths. The forest at night is a different place entirely. Branches loom like skeletal arms, sounds carry strangely, muffled by snow yet amplified by imagination. The deeper we went, the more disoriented we became. The liquor burned warmly in my stomach, dulling my caution while sharpening my senses in unsettling ways. That was when we noticed the smell. It was wrong, thick, rotten, unmistakably organic. Like decay that had no business existing in such cold. Matthias gagged, laughing nervously at first, until he realized the stench wasn't fading. It was following us. Then Matthias stopped walking. I turned to see him frozen in place, staring into the trees. "There's something there," he whispered. I saw it too, a shape barely distinguishable against the darkness. At first, I thought it was a deer. Antlers rose above the snow, silhouetted against the moonlight. Then it stood up. Deer, do not stand like men. The thing unfolded itself slowly, bones creaking audibly, rising far too tall. Its limbs were thin and elongated, joints bending at angles that made my stomach churn. The antlers were twisted, spiraling upward like broken crowns. We ran. Branches lashed at our faces as we tore through the forest, lungs burning, hearts pounding. For a moment, hope flared when we glimpsed the faint glow of village lights through the trees. Then something crashed down in front of us. The stench hit first, overwhelming, suffocating. I slipped, fell hard, and before I could recover, something seized me. Long, cold fingers wrapped around my head, forcing my face upward. What passed for its head was a mass of blackened growth, fungus, rot, something alive yet dead. There were no eyes, no mouth, just movement beneath its surface. A tendril slid free, brushing my cheek. I screamed. Then suddenly, it released me. I gasped, rolling onto my side, and that was when I saw Matthias. He had turned back for me. He swung a broken branch with all his strength, shouting, trying to draw its attention. For a moment, it worked. The thing turned toward him curious. That curiosity was fatal. It struck him down effortlessly. I tried to move. I tried to stand. My body refused. The creature lifted him as if he weighed nothing. I remember noticing its distended torso then, bloated, unnatural, pulsing faintly beneath its skin. It opened itself. Not like a wound, like a door. What followed is something I still cannot describe without shaking. Matthias screamed. I screamed. Snow fell gently around us, indifferent. When it was finished, the thing closed itself again and vanished into the trees, leaving no tracks behind. I don't remember how I made it back to the village. They found me wandering the streets near dawn, half frozen, incoherent. The police assumed I was drunk, traumatized, confused. Search parties returned to the forest but found nothing. No body, no blood, no signs of struggle beyond our footprints, which ended abruptly in untouched snow. Matthias was listed as missing. In time, he was declared dead. We left Rosenwald the following spring. Years passed. I grew older, I studied, I worked. I convinced myself that what I had seen was a hallucination born of fear and guilt. Doctors were happy to agree. It was easier that way. Then, decades later, after borders shifted and archives were opened, patterns emerged, disappearances across multiple alpine regions. Always winter, always children, always forests, never bodies. That is why I write this now. Because it still walks, because it waits for the snow, and because some things do not die, they endure. Thanks for spending your time here. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, feel free to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.